My name's Alan Kreitzer. I'm a member of the board of directors here at the museum. So I work for Nancy Miller and Lynn Paxton, which is really a tough spot to be in, as we all know.
Here, commercial.
So today what we have is a roundtable. These are actually monthly events that we have at the museum, ranging in a wide variety of topics. But it's really helped the museum to get people here on a Sunday, which was normally an off day. And it's fun. The whole idea of this museum is to get everybody together, talk about things that happened in the past while looking ahead to the future of what we can do. So it's great to have people here with a background in auto racing, anything mechanical. So check our website, EMMR.org, and you'll see the schedule there for the monthly events that we have. But again, thank you very much for coming today. Just a couple things to get started. Snack bar right over here. We have restrooms over here as well. There are also restrooms downstairs. And before you leave, we hope you have the time to walk around the museum and check out our new building, which is right out here. That's Lynn's latest project. And his whole theory is that if he keeps us deeply enough in debt, we'll all keep working hard. So far that's worked out. But it's very nice. It's a 60 by 60 addition that they put in. So our panel today, who we have really this is a very interesting group. I think this will be a lot of fun. I got pressed into duty. I don't believe Dave Hare could be here. Dave's our normal MC, but I'll do my best. But I have to tell you, with this group, I haven't been this nervous since Danny Dietrich had a Twitter account. But hopefully what I'll do is just get them started. And then I think we have enough stories here, but I told the ladies that the more they contribute, the less chance there will be for Paxton to jump in and disrupt things. So we'll see how that goes. But we have here Debbie Rahmer in the front, Marie Locke, wife of Fred. Debbie, of course, wife of Fred back here. Kathy Kaufman, the Queen of Port Royal for many years. And of course, Barb Paxton, who not only has to put up with Lynn, but is very instrumental here at the museum as well. But before we start...
Thank you. I want to say thanks to Pat and Judy for making our no lunches you might get here today. They do hard work. I think we had a birthday party here last night with John Westbrook and his family, and Judy was here till like 11 o'clock. Back again this morning at 8, so we appreciate the help that she and Pat do here. I don't think little Freddie's here today.
He has homework.
But I do want, good for him, but I do want to congratulate you and Fred and the family for your championship this year.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank all you ladies for coming. I appreciate you taking the time to be here. And there's a thing I see on Facebook that's called, you know you're from Juniata County when? So I'm going to add to that, and I'm just going to say that we're proud to have Keith Kaufman from Juniata County, and you are representing our alma mater. We went to the same high school, and I'm sure they're all proud of you. That's about all I'm going to have for today. I just hope everybody, Debbie wanted to know what kind of questions was going to be asked, so everybody open up. I think she'll be here to have it. Thanks for everybody coming.
Thank you guys.
Nice trip. Nice trip.
Well, again, this will be very casual, very open. Like I say, I'll try to get things started, but really, any questions that are semi-appropriate, Ken? Semi-appropriate.
The first one it wasn't.
Not yet, not yet. I'm saying we will be open to questions. We're not yet. But thank you for your participation, really.
Who invited them? Who invited them?
Debbie was a little tentative about this, but when she sat down in the first face she sees who nervous down, she's now deathly afraid. But no, we'll go. And again, just to start, I thought what we would do is just let our participants here tell us a little bit about how they got involved in auto racing. Were they involved in auto racing before they were married to the fine gentleman that they brought along today, or their background? I know there is some, and we'll go from there. Debbie, why don't you start us off?
Sure. My name is Debbie Rio Reamer. My father, Frank, has owned a race car since 1951, and we grew up in the big block era of modified racing. And I was part of Reading Fairgrounds and growing up and watching all my heroes there. And in fact, one of them is here today, Mr. Barb Paxton over there. But always went to the races, loved them, cried when he didn't take me, and now I cry because I do go to the races. But I did meet my husband through a mutual friend, Harry Turner, and he introduced me, and then I started going small block racing with my husband, or boyfriend at the time, and then we went sprint car racing a few years later, and I'm still doing it, so.
My name is Marie Locke. My husband Fred. We were dating at the time, and I took him to the first race. And on Wednesday night, he decided to take one of the cars out. They had practice every Wednesday night at Silver Spring. So he took the car out. He brought it in. He said, "Boy," he said, "I think I did pretty good." And I said, "Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but I could have ran faster than that." So that's how we got started. We've been married. That was 60 years ago. Since we've been involved in racing. So now I have 2 sons and a grandson and a nephew who all raced. So, and now I have a 4th generation coming up. He's only 2, but he's going to be ready.
Okay, my name's Kathy Kaufman. I'm married to Keith, but I wasn't a race fan when I met Keith. Actually, I'm the 75 model. There were several women prior to me, but I was actually put him in his place and made him the person that he is today. We've been married, it'll be 40 years in February that we've been married.
Can you hold that closer?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, did you get all that?
Yeah. You can do it again.
No, that's all right. All right. We got it. Okay. Anyway, so I became a race fan pretty quickly once I married Keith and went to most of the events with him. We have 2 children, Becky and Chase. We have 2 grandchildren, Malia and Brody. I still help at Port Royal. Keith's on the board now that he's retired from racing. He actually goes over to the meetings and gives his input at the racetrack, and he's enjoying that part of his racing too. And I'm there helping with the novelty stand. So anyway, that's it.
Hi, I'm Barb Paxton, and where do I begin? I've been around racing since 1955, probably. I worked at Lincoln Speedway since I was 5 years old. I started out with dishing ice and soda cups and worked my way up through, and I didn't meet Lynn at the races. I knew of Lynn at the races, but I didn't think much of him. So Neil Haight was my guy. That's how long ago this has been. Neil Haight was my man. But my mother happened to bring him to met him down in Florida one time and invited him and Smitty to our home one evening, and that's how I met Lynn. So it was a dare that I went out on a date with him. And that was a dare. And so anyhow, I don't remember when you guys were dating.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
That was a long time
And you had
ago.
3 little babies.
And I had babies,
Yeah.
yes. But I dated Lynn. I sort of left my Lincoln Speedway behind me and followed him around as a girlfriend. And I guess we got married in 1970, so we've been married 47 years, and we have 3 children. And he raced quite a bit, like 4 nights a week, which I'm sure it's nothing compared to the way the guys race right now, but back then it was a lot. So I stayed at home quite a bit and raised his children for him. So we have 3 children, and we're very proud of what they've accomplished. And none of them really wanted to go into racing. Brett started Mitch Smith tried to get him to go into racing. He was racing go-karts for a while, but he decided he'd rather be a Boy Scout than a race car driver. And I know he was very upset one time when Mitch had got him a brand new go-kart for the next year. And he said, I don't think I want to do that, Dad, because I won't be able to get my Eagle Scout. And Lynn said, well, it's up to you, whatever you want to do. But he said, this is true, right, Lynn? You said to him, I think Eagle Scout will look better on a resume than a race car driver. So, and he did earn his Eagle Scout, so we were proud of him, and we're proud of our daughters too. So, and here we are at the museum. After he retired, I see him less and less. So this is his second home, and Judy with the witch's hat on, she's his wife that's over here. I call her. Whenever he's over here, that's his wife. Okay. She tries to keep him in. It doesn't work. Tries to keep him in check, but it doesn't work. And here we are. He lives at the museum. I live at home. I do help out with the museum. I did run the fair for quite a bit, for 30 years. I did that here. I was here when it was initially built. I remember being down in the field chopping up bushes, wanted to clear the way for the racetrack down there. So this is my life right now, I guess. I probably talk too much.
No, that was great, thank you. I think though, what did we learn from that? From listening to the four? I think the biggest thing we took from that was we need not have any sympathy for any of the four, because it sounded to me like they all dated these guys and knew what they were getting into. Marie, you brought Fred into the racing. Yeah, because I thought your family, you were involved in racing prior.
I used to go to Williams Grove with my grandmother.
Right, so your background was really the racing, and then you brought,
Right.
yeah, brought it in.
Well, Alan, can I make I knew a lot of race car drivers growing up, quite a few growing up, and I swore I would never marry a race car driver. And I couldn't believe that I did what I did.
When I married Keith, I said that we will not live on the road. We will have a home and be stable and have a stable family like I grew up in. And that's where we are today.
It took a while. One of my favorite comments that you made, a quote I always associate with Kathy Kaufman, is in the pit area one night. She said, you know, really, we're all just like carnies. All we do is drive up and down the road and a different event every other night. But tell us a little bit about that. When you started, you said you actually started by dating your soon-to-be husbands, I guess, in racing. And when the guys, that would have been when they were first starting out, I would assume, in their racing. Was Fred already causing trouble at Grandview when you got together? No, really, was he all, I don't know what the chronological order is there.
The story I tell all the time is Harry Turner is my brother's age, so my father raced with Harry's family at Hatfield Speedway, and they used to fist fight in the pits. And when my brother was friends with Harry, I always thought Harry was crazy, but Harry was racing small blocks with my husband, whom I call Fritz. Never called him Fred. My family calls him Fritz. The people that grew up with him call him Fritzy. So when I was dating Fritz, I was at Grandview Speedway in the stands, and I was sitting next to Gail, and they had a banner behind me that said, Fred sucks. And I said, and this is the God's honest truth, I said to Gail, man, I feel sorry for that Fred guy, because they must really hate him. So at the end of the night, Harry said, you know, what'd you think of his racing? And I said, man, he's crazy out there. And I said, there's a banner hanging on the front stretch for this Fred guy. And he goes, Debbie, that is Fritz. And I don't think we went out for a couple weeks after that. And then that's just the story I tell. I never really thought about dating a racer. I truthfully didn't have a lot of boyfriends and just went to the races and hung out. I grew up with Billy Pouch, Timmy Pouch. They're Billy's wife Barbara. I grew up with them, like the Bullocks. I was always at the races, hanging out. And I didn't really think about dating and if I was going to marry a race car driver, because when we went to the races, we always went and drove home. We never traveled. You know, it was not a deal where we do what we do, and it was hard for many, many years because I worked full time and we tried for so many years to have children. And when I remember when Fritz first went out to Lincoln Speedway, I thought it was the other side of the world. And I thought, man, I hope he never races these kind of cars. And he was actually racing for my father the year he was in the R10, and he kind of quit my dad. We had 13 feature wins that year. He has never let me let it down. But he said, I want to go sprint car racing, and I was devastated over that because it was far. Grandview Speedway is 10 minutes from the house, so it was quite a transition. And I know it's hard for you to believe this, I was a very quiet girl until I came out to Central PA and saw the craziness. And the first set of people that I met, Bobby Allen and Richard Lupo and Van May, and the first question I asked Van was, where are you from? And I said, what kind of nationality are you? And he told me he was Texan. I thought, what the hell's the matter with him? And I cried for many weeks and thought, this can't be happening. And then I met wonderful people. So it's my life, but it was very, very difficult for me. So I hope that answers your question.
Typical Rahmer, though, luckiest guy in the world through his whole career. I mean, let's face it, here it is. She wasn't dating anybody, are you kidding me? And Rahmer sweeps in, yeah, what a deal, what a deal. And really, the people that had that Fred Sox banner at Grandview, they now have a pass to Lincoln Speedway because that's what got them the sprint cars. We're forever grateful for it. So that was really good. What about you? You brought up some of the things. Your husband's now, Fred not as much, but the sprint car guys really did get into a lot of travel, you know, with their schedules. And Keith was on the road on tour for a couple years with the Outlaws, with Darrell, and you know, then ran dirt champ cars and different things. So tell us a little bit about that and the adjustments that you personally had to make by when that happened and their careers developed and changed. And Marie, you can tell us about going to Fredericksburg and fighting people down there. Go ahead, Kathy.
No, when Keith, when I first started dating Keith, I was lucky enough to have people like Barb Paxton, and I actually saw some of the same characters Debbie did, but I stayed on the other side of the infield. She protected me. She with her 3 kids, and of course we didn't have Becky until we were married for 7 years. But we raced locally, and we raced Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, which was really difficult to do when Keith had one car, one motor. You know, the guys just worked their butts off constantly, and we went to every race that we could, and because that's how we made a living. And then it was probably about maybe 10 years after we were married that we went out on the road. We bought a motor home and we took the kids, and it was a whole different world, but you know, we met nice people out there. We became really close with the Wolfgangs and with the Jacobs. And I was lucky to actually find some really valuable friends that we are still friends with today, and our children all played together, and it was just wonderful. But then we came back home, and that's when I became close to Debbie and Fred, and then their kids were born, and there's just so many people. It seems like we're a family. Like none of us were competitive, but within ourselves. It was like you wanted to do the best you could do for yourself. We weren't there to like beat our friend, even though it was really fun to do. But it's been different. I mean, our children, you know, were really involved with their school sports, and Chase did do go-karts for 1 year. He was only like maybe 11 years old, and he won 10 races out of 11, And, but then he was more interested in playing football and running track, and our daughter also did field hockey and track, and so we had a different life, but it was fun. You just make the best of it, like all of us do with what we have, and so that's how it was.
I have a suck story.
Oh. Uh-oh, was I in it?
No, well, no, but your husband was in it.
Oh.
I've told this story before, but if some of you haven't known it, I used to sit in the grandstand at Port Royal sometimes, and I was sitting up there, and Lynn and Keith were going at it for the first and second, and Keith was winning, and this little girl, yeah, speaking of, it was good competition, friendly competition, and this little girl and her girlfriend were sitting in front of me. They were about 11 and 12 years old, and they were sitting with their parents, and all of a sudden, Lynn comes and passes Keith going into turn one, and this girl, she just folds her arms and she goes, "Lynn Paxton sucks." Because she loved Keith Kaufman. Everybody loved Keith Kaufman.
Most women did.
They did. So I leaned over and I said, "Honey," I said, "No," I said, "he doesn't suck." And then she said, "Well, he stinks." And I said, "Well, he doesn't stink either because I sleep with him every night." She looked up at me and she thought, and her parents said, "Are you his wife?" I said, "Yes." I better be his wife. But it is funny how you don't notice things when people don't know who you are. And it is fun that way, I think.
Yeah, I had someone come up to me at Port Royal while I worked in the novelty stand, and they said, "Are you Keith's wife?" And I said, "Yeah." And they go, "No, you're not. She has brown hair." I said, "Well, she did."
That was part of it, like you say, when you travel around and you got to meet other people. I guess one of the things that I wanted to know from each of you was, in your years, who did you associate with, as far as who did you become friendly with, and some of the stories of those people, and some of the stories, and how many races did you actually attend? Like when you started, not a number, but I mean, did you try to go to races all the time? Were you, Barb, like you said, were you at home with the kids? How'd that all work? Because obviously, I would think that all of you had to take care of the house, and for the most part.
And the yard.
In the yard. But just how did you
Well,
go ahead, Barb.
Hey, now let me tell you how I ran over.
now let me tell you. At Lynn's 50th birthday party, my sister got up and she said, "I want to thank Lynn for giving and supplying his wife with everything she needs whenever she asks for it. A weed eater, a new lawn. I can chainsaw with the best of them." But yeah, he's a good provider, like your mother would always say. Now, Lenny's a good provider. And I said, "Yes, he is, but he's hardly ever home." Here's your question.
Just some of the people you met along the way.
Okay. Some of the people, well, Reese Smith and Lynn Smith, they were great friends of ours. Smitty was Lynn's mechanic when I first met Lynn. And Lynn started dating Smitty, and we became very good friends over the years. We actually stood up for them when they got married, and they're both gone now. Lynn just passed away not too long ago, and I really miss her. And their son Mark and Brett, like you said, Kathy, they used to play around the flagpole. All the kids played together, and they became really good friends. Other people that I met, there's just, well, Kathy, of course, and I've just met you, Deb. I don't know you very well because you were in another era of racing, and but I'm hoping to get to know you better in the future. But all the other people that I met such fans. The fans have been terrific. There's great fans and people, the owners, Mary and Mr. Boop, they've been great friends throughout the years, all the car owners. Of course, there's Al and Betty. I remember them from, I think they got us a wedding gift and we still use it. That was a long time ago. And we've been friends with Al for a good many years. And you always stay with friends, like the Moore girls right here, Debbie and Penny. They used to help with the kids, and their dad used to work on Lynn's race car, and we are still talking to each other. And with Lynn being involved in the museum, I'm getting to know more and more people from the different kinds of racing and such, and we've become friends over the past 30 years that we've been, more than 30 years that we've been here. But you just meet a lot of new friends and you keep them, and there's quite a few.
Well, we actually have Jack and Anita Gallagher. Jack was a photographer when Keith and I first started dating, and they're here today, which I haven't seen them for a while. But it's really neat to have friends that you get to see again over and over. And what also was neat about traveling was every state we went to, there was somebody that we hadn't seen for a while, and we'd get to visit with them or stay with them. And then when they'd come to Pennsylvania, they'd stay with us. And so we have a lot of great memories too.
Well, the only time we got to travel being in the Super Sportsman is when Alan graciously gave us some tour races. We went to like Fredericksburg or Big Diamond or one of those places. But overall, racing has been great for our family. I know it has destroyed some families, but ours, it has been great. Our two sons were involved in racing, and thankfully my daughters-in-law went along with it. And now that I have a great-grandson coming along, hopefully we can get him into go-karts pretty soon, Howard. Both of our boys started racing go-karts when they was just small, and I remember Freddie was racing at Silver Spring, and he won like 10 out of 12 races. And the only two he missed was he was sick one time and he was on vacation one time. So possibly he could have won them all. But go-karting was a lot of fun, way to bring your children up. And I remember the one time Fred was getting sick of racing and he wanted to quit. So we had a family vote. He lost.
Don't talk about my Fred like that. I love him.
Yeah, I know you love Fred.
People that we have met. Obviously, Howie Locke and his wife Patty were dear friends. Kathy and Keith Kathy's my right arm. Have wonderful stories with Kathy and the kids, and continues to today. Ann Zortman is another one of my good friends. I've met I see their faces here, fans that come year after year. I've met some crazies over the years. First time I met Brent Kading, Fritz was racing out at Arizona, and I flew in with Kathy. Well, we met there, and Brent went to the local girly bar and had Welcome Back Fred Reamer put on the marquee. I never met the man, and I realized that he's quite the bad influence. Brooke Tatnall, when we get into our Australian friends, Brooke Tatnall stayed at my house for a summer, and he calls me Mom to this day, still calls me Mom. He came over back in the 90s. And then when Fritz started going to Australia, we met so many people, and they have all come and stayed with us and continue to stay with us.
Tell the story about Stevie Wonder.
Actually, this involves Kathy. We were racing for Bob Stewart down in Florida, and this is before I had the kids. And I had a great job. I mean, and I've always worked full time. Even when I had the triplets, I worked full time. And I think I'm tired now than when they were little. But anyway, before I had the kids, I did go to every race there was. I mean, I did everything with Fritz. I mean, I admire, when we're at the races, I admire what he does, so I always was with him. But we were in Florida one time, and this man tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, do you know Freddie? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm married to him. He said, oh my God, I would love to meet him. He's there, I'm a big fan of his. And we got to talking, and here he was caddying for Pink Floyd. No, wait, what was that guy's name that was the golfer? Oh, Ray Floyd. Ray Floyd. Ray Floyd was the golfer. And I was close. And
Not that she did any drugs at the Pink
no, it was Ray Floyd. And he went on to be Tiger Woods' caddy, Steve Williams. And Steve races late models in New Zealand. But that year, I think it was 92 or 93, and we talked for quite a while, and he spent that week with us. He came every night because there was a tournament in the area, and he came every night to meet us. And then I said, I'm really going to make your week. I said, my girlfriend's here with her husband, and you're going to love meeting him, because he was talking about Keith all week. Well, needless to say, he was thrilled that he got to meet Kathy and Keith. And every year since that time, Steve has come to visit with us. He either stays with us or he drives to one of our races. And this past year, he stayed with us, I think it was a week, Fritz. And he tells me all the time how he admires my children, but his gift is his ability to make you focus. And he has given so much to my kids, especially little Freddie. Freddie's busy, focused, and Freddie, in my opinion, is a little too serious with this racing crap. But Steve helps him think and focus, and that's what he's so good at. And to have Steve Williams think that our guys are cool is beyond belief, because to me, he's the most famous person I know. Right, Kathy? And every time when he's with us, it's 50% me and it's 50% Fritz. It's not, he's with the boys all the time, he's with me. And we got to know his wife and his son Jed, and it's unbelievable because the man is pretty famous. And he even references Fritz in his book. But there's so many people. And I think if it wasn't for those people that I see every week, it would be very hard for me to come, because I'm driving 2 hours up myself. Sometimes I drive home. Sometimes I come back up again. And I go to my parents. My parents are elderly. I go there. It's very hard to drive down that turnpike. And the people are what makes the difference. And I can honestly say that it's not the racing to me. It's the people. And we have been very fortunate to be very friendly with all the people that we've raced for throughout the years, be with us. And they're still with us today. And that's the greatest thing. And these people right here, it's the women that I know that are from the elder generation. And I'm not afraid to say it. I do not know all of the younger drivers. I raised my kids, I was in the infield. I don't know them, but I really have respect for all of the drivers that are now retired and older, because they are the sport.
Yep. And I want to say, it's interesting how, with the racing papers, how we all get excited and read about the NASCAR drivers and all of our friends and competitors, and it's interesting to remember that those guys read about our guys, and they're all just as excited to meet them as we are to meet, those guys. And we've raced for a lot of different people too. We're so fortunate because a lot of us have raced for the same people, and we're still all friends, and we all know why we do it, and we're lucky that we could make a living doing it.
Go ahead. You talked a little bit about being involved in the race teams and the people that you've met. I had a question on how much, well, Marie alluded to it, you had a family vote. Fred didn't want to race, you all wanted to, so you kept racing. Well, that's involvement, that's what I think. But how much was their involvement from you, and what was your input into the racing? Like when things came up, all your guys drove for different car owners. You know, we all know in racing, you get with a car owner, it's like a manager almost in baseball. When you get hired, you're going to get fired. It's just the way things work. You know, how's all that work from a family perspective? Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, it's hard because everybody we've ever raced for, we've become family with, and you don't forget those families and you still want to stay involved. But it's also difficult because when you're left go, you're usually told it's business, and it's really difficult because you can't just let go of family. So, I don't know, we're all in this together, so I guess that's what makes it easier. We all have the same thing, we all get hired and fired. So that's, and is that good?
That's good. Yeah.
Barb, do you want to say anything?
Well, how much were you involved, like, in the decision-making process when that would come up? Like, are you involved in what rides are available or what he would take? Not that you would pick, but I mean, I'm sure you're consulting.
Not really. No, Keith
That's what I wanted to know, yeah.
No, he made the decision and I just had to deal with it.
Right.
But of course, but I made things work, you know. I mean,
Right.
you know,
That's,
you just
and that was
always,
important.
yeah, you do the best you can. You always have to make your kids behave. I've had some really exciting children's stories. I think Chase did something in every state we ever traveled in. One year we filled in for Kenny Jacobs in Florida, and we had just gotten to the motel, and they had gotten there before us. Kenny broke his arm in Australia or something, and his car owner, Denny Ashworth, called and asked Keith if he'd fill in. So of course Kim and Kenny came to watch, and we got there with our kids. We got in the motel. It was a beautiful motel. Well, all of a sudden, we're carrying our stuff in, and I see fire trucks coming down off the ramp, and I hear the whistles blowing, and they're going like you can't go on your floor, and I'm like, why? And I'm looking around for my kids. Well, I couldn't find Chase, and he comes running out, and I said, oh my word, there's a fire. And he goes, Mom, you know that red thing that's in the hallway? He goes, I pulled it. Oh my word, we're going to get a fine, and we're not going to be able to pay it because we have to race to make money. So anyway, here we are meeting the Ashworths in the parking lot, saying this is our son Jason just pulled the fire alarm. And then let me think. And then I was so mad at him, I went down and apologized at the desk and said, my son's the one that pulled the fire alarm. And of course the one girl's going, oh, he's so cute. And so I made him go back upstairs. He was only maybe 6 years old, and I made him write 100 times, I will not pull the fire drill, I am sorry. And it took him hours. And finally he took it back down and gave it to the lady at the desk, and she goes, oh, so sweet. And I'm like, oh. And then that same hotel, there was a woman there playing Disney songs on the grand piano, and my son Chase is on the balcony with Lee Jacobs throwing quarters into her cleavage. Oh, help me. But that's just a couple of them. Do you have any good ones?
I don't have any, no, not like that. And as far as making any decisions for Lynn Paxton is what he does, moi. He makes his own decisions, but I let him know if I agree with him or not. And other than that, no, over the years he's made pretty good decisions. We did own our race car 1 year ourselves, which he didn't like. So he went out and did find another owner for that. But his decisions were pretty good, what he made.
Fred and I would always, he'd come home and say who he wanted to drive for, and we'd just look around and see what the car was like before, and we always just made a decision together. I think a couple of times he overruled me, but we stuck through it.
I'm in the same boat. Fritz always made the decisions. I really never questioned. The only time I can remember being, actually I was very upset, was he decided he was going to take a couple cars over to Australia. And I think Todd Schaefer was involved. He was taking Todd over to race Moon, Lee, and at the end of the session, then he was going to sell the race cars. So every day from the beginning, that when they went over, I heard, Todd bent a wing up last night, or, he was, Todd still to this day tells me that he was the worst car owner he ever had. So that was the only time I ever was affected by it, because there was a lot of money that we had put out to do something, but it turned out to be okay. But I always respected his decisions, did not regret racing for anybody that we've raced for, so we were fortunate.
Debbie, how do you like the promotional end of it with your endeavors at Path Valley?
Well, I always got into, I always liked the marketing end of it. I always liked marketing Fritz, meaning, like his stats and all of that. Of course, I always had to call Brian Householder and double check, but I enjoyed that. And it even brought me into what I'm doing today, because I have a promotional company. I am partners with John Haynes in a promotional company, and John Haynes is the gentleman that owns Haynes and Kibble House, which he has 70 companies, so you might know Handwork, Locust Ridge Quarries, and what have you. So I kind of am involved on the promotional side. Never realized the amount of work that went into promoting a race. And quite frankly, if we weren't doing it, that would be something that I wouldn't mind being off of our resume. But we enjoy it. What we're doing, we enjoy. We have a good group of people, but it is hard work. So I don't envy you, Alan, with what you do week to week.
No, you just don't envy me for being here. Now, you talk a little bit about the people that you've met in racing and the friends that you've made in the, all over the country, really. But there have to be some people along the way that you really didn't like. So hand the microphone to Marie there. I'm just going to get started. I'll mention a couple names and you go ahead. Okay? Bobby Brymesser.
Oh, I like Bobby.
Got along with him. I thought you hit him over the head with a pocketbook at so much.
No.
Well, I will tell you this story about Brymesser. Back in the old rough and tumble days at Silver Spring, Brymesser got thrown out for 2 weeks, which was not an uncommon occurrence. So after the first night, Brymesser's sitting in the grandstands, and he comes up to my father and he said, "Will, I don't care if you let me race or not, but can I go down the pits?" He said, "Those people in the stands are terrible. I don't want to be up there." So, okay, well, let's try another one. Gary Wolford.
That was a love-hate. I really liked Gary, I just didn't like the way he drove.
Fair enough.
Simple as that.
Yeah, that was good. How about some other names over the years? Who else did you maybe have a love-hate relationship with? I always thought Wolford was more on the side of hate than love, but I
I always liked Gary,
Yeah.
I just did not like the way
And it
he
was
drove.
nice in the later years with the fish fry and everything, you two
Yeah,
always got
yeah.
together. Because he always said when he'd be hiding around the corner and he saw you come in, he goes, "Well, here's Marie, I better go say hello."
He gave me a compliment, he said, "I sure did back my family."
There you go. Very good. Now, how about Russ Smith? I thought, wasn't Russ Smith always Howie's favorite driver?
No,
at
it's
Silver Spring?
Freddie's.
Freddie's.
Freddie's favorite driver, yep. Yep, that was his favorite driver.
Yeah. that
And
was
I
good.
thought Russ was an awesome driver, I liked him.
Yeah. How about some of the older Dick Snare? Did you know Dick very well?
Yeah, I knew Dick.
Yeah. Trying to think who else. Who started at the same time when you did?
Definitely.
Yeah, I know, we're going back
I'm
now.
maybe 2 years older.
Yeah.
My memory's not as good as
Howie, help me out here a little bit. I heard you have some stories. Go ahead. What can you jog your memory with a little bit?
Other than the infamous Wolford ripping mom's blouse off at Fredericksburg.
No, I never heard that. That sounds like Raymer's drivers meeting at Path Valley. If you're going to fight, do it in the front stretch so everybody can see it.
Well, this wasn't the payout window. I mean, if that has anything to do with it, at least it was where the money was being handled. I actually got to witness almost the whole
Okay, Marie, 82 or not, I want to hear this. Go ahead.
Okay, that was the night Fred was leading the race, and Gary took him out, and it pissed me off. So I had a meeting with him out at the
She needs a
jail.
mic.
Closer to your mouth.
Okay, real close.
So we had a meeting out at the payoff shack. And he took a hold of me. Well, my brother was trying to hold me back.
Brother being Bob,
Bobby.
who owned the car that
Yeah.
your nephew drove.
Right. He was trying to hold me back, and Gary was he didn't actually tear my blouse off. He pulled at it, and my brother was pulling one way, and Gary was pulling the other way. And it came off.
I was there to witness that. I want to say that's not exactly the way that She's trying to butter up the Woodford program.
Well, since it was at the payoff window, was there extra money involved?
But I do remember Debbie Rahmer come up to us one time and said, "I didn't know Fred ever raced at Grandview." And I said, "Yeah, one time Gary and Russ was running team cars or something at the time."
99, 98?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of them was still sitting, so they called Fred and asked if he wanted to drive at Grandview. And it was the Grandview Championship, okay? So we went down. Fred, I think he won the heat, and he also won the feature that day with they called them the Bugs,
Right.
okay? And it was a championship race. We won a whopping $35. So we went out to lunch afterwards, put it on the table. $35 back then, you know, was a little bit. We put the money on the table and said, "Just feed us to us all."
So you went to Grandview, everybody was well fed, and you had a good day?
Yeah.
Lived the race again.
Right.
That
And
was
it
good.
was terrible to sit in the grandstands. That was just a fighting pit. You know, all the women sitting in there, and husbands and sons and stuff racing.
Well, you were actually of the era when women were not permitted in the
Right,
area.
absolutely. We had to sit, and that's where all the fights started. Was in the grandstands.
Yeah. Barb, were you that way? Were you?
Yeah, we were, we weren't allowed in the pits early on, no.
But we didn't really want to be.
No, not at first, I agree.
No, there was no women allowed in the
Or
pits.
children, Keith never thought it was safe to have your children in the pits. I mean, people wanted to do that, but
Well, Raymer just took it down. He made little Freddie work from the time he was Freddie. Like, Fred, what are you doing? I don't know, but little Freddie's changing the Raymer.
I remember Alan and Hallie and Freddie playing with their race cars down in front of the grandstand, playing with their cars.
Yeah, that's true. Well, when did that all change, Barb? Did you ever go into pit area?
No, I never went into the pits.
So you were a grandstand, and did you go
Grandstand or else the infield.
Did you go to most of the races?
I went, before the kids were born, I did go to most of the races. And then I didn't take my kids to the races until they were a little bit older, like 3 years old. I didn't think that they should be there. I don't blame people that did take them, but I just felt that they needed to be at home, because we didn't get home sometimes till 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was just a long, we were always traveling back and forth to home.
Did you travel to the events with Lynn?
Yes, we did. Smitty and Lynn Smith, his wife, they always took the rig. So Lynn and I would go to the races by ourselves with friends or whatever if they were going up. But I would only go Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If he would race like Ohio or New York or something during like a Wednesday night, I never went on Wednesday nights. But I could always tell what he did when he came home from the races on those nights. Because if his uniform was clean, I said, oh, what happened to the car? Because you knew he didn't race. And if it was dirty, you knew he raced. So I could always sort of tell how he did when he walked in the door.
What was the story? I heard Reese Smith say one time, Lynn either liked to drive to the track or home from the track, but he didn't do both. Was that he would drive to the races or something, but then he always drove home and recap the event?
Yeah, and if he was quiet if he didn't do well, but if he won, hang on, because it was a ride home, talking the whole way. But if he was in a good mood after a race, that's good. That's how I got my house, because I had this little picture of a house that I wanted to build in my wallet that I kept for like a year or two. And we were coming home, I think it was from Sealands Grove actually. And he was in a really good mood. I pulled that picture out and I said, can we have our house now?
Paxton, she got you there. Where is he?
He was in a good mood, yeah.
I'm hiding behind Ramer. I figured if I turn through this way, he'll catch me.
What did that race pay that you had to buy a house?
It was a good weekend. And I didn't burn any money that weekend.
I was like, no, about the burning the money.
Yeah, I burnt a paycheck cash. You get it in a little envelope folded in half. I don't know how they pay you today. Do they pay you in cash or is it a check?
Checks.
Checks, okay. Well, we got cold cash. And they fold it in half and they'd stick it in this little tiny manila envelope. And we came home from Port Royal, I think it was, and he would lay it on the kitchen counter and there it would lay. And of course, I am a tidy freak, so I was cleaning up the next morning and I'm out cleaning things up and throwing things away. And the next Monday, and I went to burn something Monday, and I had already burned the trash on Sunday. And I looked down and I thought, what is that? And here it was a lot of money folded in half burnt. So when I was cleaning up on Sunday, I picked up that manila envelope and I burnt $1,000, was it? I think it was $1,000, and but we got enough back that we could pay Mr. Emmerich and the mechanic, but Lynn raced for nothing that night.
Has he ever let you live that down?
Oh my God.
Does he bring it up occasionally? I mean,
No, he brings other things up.
Hey Al, back years ago, women weren't allowed in the pits, had to sit in the stands. One night at Fredericksburg, a guy came down and he said, Mr. Locke, your wife's up there crying. She wants to see you. I said, what's she crying about? So I got out of the pits and I went up. Marie's sitting there and she's shaking. I said, what's wrong? I said, see that guy down there? Yeah, he don't like you. He keeps yelling, Bird, hit him, run him over the track, kill the son of a bitch, stuff like that. So I went down, that's before he wore a uniform, so I went down and sat alongside of this guy. We were there talking, and I said, who's your favorite driver? Aaron Falk. I said, yes, Aaron's a real good driver. So what do you think of that guy who drives that 77? I don't like that SB. I said, did you ever meet him? No. Why do you ask that? I swung Fred Locke. That time on, that guy was my #1 fan.
That happened a lot.
I think
That's quite common.
And for you, I think it had to be extremely difficult because people have favorites for no reason really, almost like we do with professional sports teams. I mean, you like guys, you're not sure what they're like individually, but when you hear that, it had to be very difficult to, hear some of that things, just from partisan fans that didn't really know.
I lived through that many weekends.
Well, Silver Spring was very famous. They loved for you to win.
Yeah.
Silver Spring was very famous for that because they loved for you to win the first time. After that, you got boozed all the time. We went through that crowd.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll never forget the night he caught on fire. Do you remember that night?
Yes, I do.
I thought I lost a son that night. And there was someone in the grandstand yelling, burn that SB.
Oh my gosh.
And Jack Fraser came over the loudspeaker and he says, I don't know where you are, but if I wasn't so old, I'd come down there and beat the shit out of you.
Yeah. Well, remember, we only take their money, we don't give IQ tests.
But anyhow, that night, how I caught on fire so bad, I started hyperventilating. Hal was walking up through the pits afterwards, waving to the crowd, and they're taking me to the hospital. Because I hyperventilated, my blood pressure went up sky high.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's one thing we'll talk about after the break, is a little bit, because we have some experience here, and I want to know what the difference is, like when your husband races versus your children or grandchild, and the different feeling that you have with that, or what changes when you're looking at that. Lynn wanted me to announce here that the Stan Lobitz, who has been a longtime supporter of Eastern Museum of Motor Racing, is based in Hazleton, PA, and he recently sold his establishment, which he's certainly of age to do that. So, but Stan's been a great supporter of EMMR. He also holds, I think he held the ARDC banquet at his place in Hazleton for a lot of years. But what has happened is we will actually have his party, he always has a movie party, right here at the museum. And that will be held here on Sunday, November the 5th of this year from 9 a.m. is when it begins. You have a swap meet scheduled at 9 a.m., a silent auction, where there'll be movies from 10 a.m. to noon, and then a racing roundtable from 1 to 2:30. Lynn, who's on the roundtable for that? Do you have that set up?
Yeah, Stan is, of course, we're going to be honoring Stan. He has been one of our major fundraisers for 35 years. And the items that are going to be auctioned off are actually over there. If you want to bid on them, you're welcome to go over and bid on the items right over there. They hang on that wall right over there. But Stan's been a great guy. I have some surprises for him, some people coming. I did talk to Mario Andretti last week. And we were going to try to get Mario here because Mario bought a block on our wall out here. And he knew Stan and he knows what he's done for us. The problem is he's already booked to do the PRI show. But we're still going to try to get him down and get something from him for Stan. I have some of the ARDC guys coming. We're just going to give him a general roast. We're going to kind of stand him up tall and then kick his feet out. My whole deal is I'm going to get him crying and speechless. That's the best way to get him. Come on over, it'll be fun.
One of the things we wanted to talk about a little bit with Debbie, there was a great event at Lincoln Speedway. How many years ago was it now? 3? 3 years ago that Fred Rahmer put together, and it was a Legends race. And his whole idea there was to bring former great drivers back to the Speedway, and instead of putting them in old cars, he actually put them in modern day sprint cars. And it was an event that really captured the imagination of a lot of people. I mean, it was a great turnout. But, you know, there are nights at the racetrack where you have a good crowd. But the thing that made this so much better was everybody left with such a good feeling. I mean, it was just neat to see everybody out there and to talk to the people who competed afterwards. I know I talked to Lynn and said, well, what'd you think? He said, I couldn't hear anything for 3 days. I can't believe how much those cars have changed since I got in them. He said the engines are so much different. He said just when you chug around, it sounds like everything's blowing up. He said then you get on it, it's you know, just the power was just immense. But I know he mentioned about the noise. But Debbie, we'll let you talk a little bit about how you set that whole thing up and the work that it took to do that.
Okay, when Alan was asking me about promoting, it kind of caught me off guard, but Fritz has always been the type to come up with ideas, and I've always helped him execute them because I am pretty organized and I am a little computer savvy. And he came up with the idea of having this Legends race, which was his idea because he was able to bring together his heroes. So he sat down and reviewed all the cars. And in fact, this weekend I stayed with Kathy last night, which is always an event in itself. But one of the stories I brought up was when I met Fritz, he was racing for Pete Damiani. Pete Damiani is best friends with Al Hamilton. And we looked up the year as, what was that?
83.
83. And we went to Nazareth Speedway, there was a 100-lapper up there, and Pete Damiani said to Fritz, he said, how would you feel about warming up a race car, a sprint car? Al's coming in and they're running late, and Keith's coming in with Al in his helicopter. And Fritz got the opportunity to take Keith Kaufman's car around the racetrack. And that was an awesome night for us. I really never really saw what a sprint car was until then. And the car, I remember the car being beautiful. The car was gorgeous. So Fritz had that opportunity. So when we did this Legends race, of course that was the car that he was going to put together for Keith. And all the people that we invited. We invited Van and Bobby Allen and Steve Siegel and Lynn and the people that just meant so much to Fritz. And then my son Brandon was able to letter the cars. So it was quite the event. I mean, but it was such a pleasure seeing and having all those people on the same racetrack again. And one of the things that sticks out in my mind is I tried to get to the drivers and say, hey, why don't you just do retro shirts and sell them? And probably about 8 or 9 out of those guys thought, you really think they'll sell? It was ridiculous. So it was an all-out great time, seeing everybody happy, everybody back at the track, all the people that you know, and everybody enjoyed it. They got to watch their heroes in the stands, and just like Fritz did, and it really meant a lot. It was really cool.
Can I say something about that?
Absolutely.
Hey, Alan, I just wanted to tell everybody here that Lynn has just agreed to do another Legends race.
I don't think
And
so.
it's going to run on topic for us.
We just got back from vacation, Debbie, and I went to the grocery store, and I ran into a friend of mine, and he says, I hear Lynn's racing a Legends race. And I said, what are you talking about? I had no clue of anything going on. Lynn did not tell me about this at all.
So much for being involved, which was one of my other questions.
Yeah, and that's true. So that's how I found out about the Legends race at the grocery store.
Did you get a new lawnmower out of it?
That's cool.
No. But we had a talk before he went that night.
Hey, Barbie, that's not when you threw the vacuum sweeper, was it?
No, that was another time. That's when I came home and he was babysitting, and I came home to a mess of the house, and I just threw the vacuum cleaner out and he said, clean it up.
Now, Kathy, we have a couple things here. I wanted to ask you about a time in, I believe it was the Williams Grove parking lot, where you had the campers parked, and you about cost Keith a ride with Leon Winnemeyer by feeding him an hors d'oeuvre. Go ahead.
Oh, this is bad, but we decided we were going to have a dinner, and we were going to have like an ethnic dinner, and Debbie's Italian, so I thought that's really cool. She can bring something Italian, and I don't know who else brought what, but I was trying to think of something really different. So they had opened this buffalo farm near us. And I thought, well, I'll just go up there and buy some buffalo balls, and I'll rent them and take them with me and not tell anybody what they are, except like Debbie. So I took them along, and they looked like chicken fingers. They looked really good, and what I did was I sliced them, and I cooked them in virgin olive oil and bread them. And we got to the race, we got to Williams Grove, and here came Leon, who was our car owner at the time, and everybody was sitting around in the motorhome, and he was eating these just like crazy, you know, and all of a sudden we told him what they were. Oh, he was so mad at me. He wouldn't talk to me at all. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to lose my ride over buffalo balls. But nobody else, now Freddie won't eat anything that I made. So
Well, we'll open it up now to questions. Anybody has any questions on culinary culinary treats that Kathy may get from her hometown? Just don't hesitate to bring that up. But do we have anybody have any questions or input?
Who taught Debbie how to make gravy?
Who invited him?
Open door
Who
policy.
invited him? That's what I want to know. That's what I call spaghetti sauce. So I have yet to make it. My mother makes it for me. So,
What about when you served it cold?
oh, he's talking about, before we used to race Grandview, Keith and Kathy used to come for dinner, and I used to get really nervous because cooking is not my forte, and I think it was the first time Keith was there, and my mother made me this huge pot of gravy, and we were sitting there for quite a while, and I hadn't even turned it on. I was so nervous, but that's what he's talking about, so, yeah, that was embarrassing.
And then there's a story about Debbie. Remember, did I tell this story about her when we raced for Weikert's Livestock? And on the side of the trailer's this great big thing of beef, and it tells you all the different parts of the cow. And Debbie and I are standing by my trailer, and she says, "So are those all the states that you've won in?" And I said, "They're the parts of the beef."
It looked like the East Coast. I didn't see anything that said shank or ribeye. I thought it was the East Coast. But Kathy's not telling the right story about the Leon Winnemeyer deal. What she told me was she was going to have an Italian night at the races. So I was telling her about what I was bringing, which was all kinds of different Italian stuff. And she's like, you're never gonna guess what I'm making. And I went through the book. I'm like, what the heck is she making? And when we got there, it looked like ring bologna. And I said, what is that? I said, that's not Italian. What the hell is that? And she told me, I was like, what? And when Leon ate 25 of them, and she come walking through the motorhome, and he's eating it, and we're like all looking at, we couldn't wait until she told him what it was. And I'm like, where do you even buy something like that? How does that happen? And that's the true story. He was freaked out. That's funny.
Speaking of food, you remember the 100 lappers that we used to have at Silver Spring? That's when, after the races, everybody brought all kinds of food. We had people brought pig that they put in the ground before the races and everything. I used to always make homemade chicken corn soup. So I would get about 40, 50 pounds of chicken, and we'd get fresh corn, and I would freeze all of this stuff in advance of the race. So then we'd take it up, and we'd have a big butcher kettle, and Fred would put the corn and everything in this big kettle, and everybody was telling Fred about what good corn soup he made. Actually, I made it. All he did was put it in the pan. Everybody saw him putting it in this big kettle, and everybody was saying, Fred, you make the best chicken corn soup. And this went on for several years until he finally told me.
Hey, I do want to ask one thing here that I had said about before the break. The idea of your children racing as opposed to your husband, and Marie now with a grandson racing. What are the differences as opposed to your husband, who sometimes I know you don't care about, like when he's going for chicken soup credit, you know. But tell us a little bit about that.
Well, of course, when Fred was racing, I was just proud of him, and I figured he's old enough that he can take care of himself. Then when the two boys started racing, the motherly instinct pulled in. And I would be very protective of my the two boys, although they didn't need it, they could take care of themselves, but I was very protective of them, and I had a different feeling altogether. I think I worried a little bit more. That's something you try not to do. You try to put it in the back of your mind, because they're doing something that they love to do, and they want to do. And then when my grandson came along, that's another whole other feeling. He's the youngest, so all those maternal feelings are closer. He's only in his 30s, but he started racing, gosh, I don't know how many years ago Derek started racing. But there's three different feelings between your husband, your son, and your grandson. And now the little fourth generation driver is running around here. I only hope I live long enough that I get to see him racing in some capacity. So that's just how I feel.
I share the same sentiments. It's quite different. When I look at my kids, I still look at them as 2-pound Freddie and 3-pound Brandon and 3-pound Jesse. And the only difference I can tell you is I do hyperventilate. I do get upset. I do get sick to my stomach. But I also do not keep my mouth shut. I took it with my husband. I listened. I sat in the stands. I did everything my father and mother told me when I was growing up and racing. You don't boo. You don't do anything. I taught my children that. But when people will say something to me about my kids, I'm like a spider monkey. And an Italian spider monkey at that. But I have been very fortunate. I have not gone through that to the extent yet. But it's a whole different feeling. But I'm very, very proud of my kids. And I'm proud of Chessie. My son Brandon is the talker. Freddie is quiet. Freddie is actually like how Fritz was when I met him, very quiet. And my daughter Chessie is in between, but Chessie plays lacrosse. She's in her last year of college. She made All-American last year. I have 3 great kids. I can't say enough, and I'm very fortunate, but it is a totally different feeling with this sprint car deal.
Well, and again, right away, like, even with Marie, Hallie was a multiple champion at Silver Spring. So that's really when the partisanship comes in, when somebody starts doing well. If you're running 12, nobody really cares. But when they start winning, like with anything, that's when it comes about. And like I say, Hallie was so good for so long, that of course, he was always fairly popular, I thought, at Silver Spring. He never really got on his case too much. Now with little Freddie and Brandon doing better, again, that
Yeah, I haven't
gets
had
the...
the bad stuff.
Right, well,
that's all
good.
been good.
That's good, that's very good. One thing, Barb, start there, just give us a little update on your family. You have people here that maybe you haven't seen for a while, but just tell us a little bit about your family and what's happening with that.
Lynn and I have 3 children, and between them we have 8 grandchildren, and they're all involved in sports. We live sports, volleyball, soccer. We have a granddaughter that plays on a national team. She's only 13 and she's doing very well. And I have a 9-year-old who plays ice hockey over at the Giant Center, and she loves it. And we have baseball and basketball, and we have a lot of that. But we also try to get together and do a lot of family things together. We go on vacations together, and Lynn's supposed to be taking us to Alaska here. Right? Yeah.
I didn't buy the bus yet.
He's saving his money. But we like to do things together like that as a family. And that's where we are right now. We're just enjoying our grandkids.
Good. Kathy, go ahead.
Becky's our oldest. She works at the Department of Revenue in Harrisburg. Our son Chase, he works at the Capitol in Harrisburg, and I work in Harrisburg. And Keith still works at PennDOT in Mifflintown. Chase has a little girl, Malia. She's 3. Becky has a little boy, Brody. He's 2. And Becky and her husband come to the races every Saturday, and Becky helps me. Chase doesn't come that often, and you know, it's always been kind of difficult for me with everybody wants to know if Chase is going to race. And sometimes I think he has to, he thinks that he has to just because his dad did. And I keep saying to him, you know, when people say that to you, just say, you know, I'm doing what I want to do. If you really want to race, you can do it. But just because you're somebody's son doesn't mean that you have to race. I mean, you're not going to be that person. Your husband's the racer. And you have to just be yourself and do what you want to do. And so everything's good with us. We actually have been able to go on some normal vacations. We never went to the beach together, and Keith was so excited. We went last year. It was so much fun taking our grandkids and going. We had a great time, and actually, this is funny. Last Friday night, we took our grandkids to see Peppa Pig, and I said, I don't know if any of you know Peppa Pig, but it's like Disney, like Mickey Mouse or something, but it was Peppa Pig at Hershey Theater, and I thought, I'm looking at Keith thinking, I took a picture of him and put it on Facebook, and I got so many comments saying he looked so thrilled, and I'm thinking like 10 years ago we were at Williams Grove Speedway, and now we're at Peppa Pig in
Step up or step down?
I'm not sure. I even said to him, I don't know how many more hours of this pig dancing on stage I can watch. But the kids loved it, and we're very fortunate. You know, we've had, like I said, a lot of good racing years. We've raced with wonderful people, and everybody's always been like family to us, and we've made the best of it. We have so many fans that, I mean, it's just great. It's amazing. Once you're a race fan, you're always a race fan, and you have your favorites, but we're still always each other's friends, and everything's great. Keith was lucky because, you know, when he started, like we said, we had the Paxtons, and when you have somebody to follow that's a family-oriented person and also invites you to their parties sometimes, and it's just fun. We were lucky to have mentors like that, and I feel for a lot of younger kids that are racing that don't have people like Freddie has Fred. I mean, it's just, and Brandon, it's just amazing how many people don't realize how lucky they are for what they have. I mean, you have to learn from the people that you've raced with, and we certainly were always appreciative of what we had and the car owners we had. So
Their husbands had such illustrious careers. What prompted them to cheat in a blindfold race?
We didn't cheat, but we wanted to win.
Vicky Leppo said,
Let me tell that question in case you want to hear it. Every year at the Gary Wolford Fish Drive, which is held down at the fairgrounds, we have a tradition of a blindfold race. So what it is, there are usually 4 cars that Joe Dara gives us, and he didn't crush, you know, he pulls them out for us. And we have teams, 2 drivers per car, well, 2 people per car. In their case, I think there were 3. You, Vicki, and Kathy, right?
Yes.
So what happens is the driver is blindfolded, completely blindfolded, and the passengers tell them whether to turn right, left, or straight, or whatever. So that's the background for this, but Ken, as I hear it, is accusing the Vicki Leppo, Kathy Kaufman, Debbie Rahmer team of cheating.
I have pictures.
You have pictures to prove it. Kathy, how can you respond to those accusations at all?
It wasn't us. We won fair and square.
You won half the race fair and square.
Get over it. Get over it.
Marie, why don't you tell us a little bit about, you talked a little bit about, of course, Howie and Derek racing, but you also have, Freddie, tell us a little bit about your family.
Okay, we have 2 sons, Howie and Freddie, and Howie was 6-time champion at Silver Spring. We were always very proud of him. Howie loved racing. Freddie was in the late models, and he did very well. I don't think Freddie loved racing. I think he likes racing. He never had the get up and go that Howie had toward racing. I hope I'm not insulting you, Freddie.
Did you lose a family vote, Freddie?
I heard Howie was
When they had, when they had the family vote, were you the odd man out?
Fritz said, I heard Howie was the pretty one.
Who said Howie was the pretty one?
Raymond.
Raymond said. Okay.
They have glasses.
Okay, and then Freddie was very good in go-karting. And now Derek, Howie's son, is in racing and 360 class. He finished, I think, 4th in the points this year at Seals Grove. He's much like Howie. Howie always finished in the top 10. He was never a multi-feature winner. He was just always there at the end in the top 2 or 3. And Derek's pretty much like that too. Freddie's son, Jared, has no interest in racing whatsoever. We can't even get him to come to the races. But he loved ice hockey. He liked tennis, and I said, I don't know how he's a member of the family, because he's the only one who does not like racing. So, we have 2 sons, 2 great daughters-in-laws, 2 granddaughters, 2 grandsons, and now a great-grandson. So, our family has just been very blessed by racing. Very close. Met a lot of fans. Jerry Burkett and Jerry and Ruth Burkett were lifetime friends. Took many trips to Florida together to see the races and so forth. And of course we met Debbie. Yeah, I love you too. I'm good.
We'll open it back up. Any more questions? Go ahead, sir.
Was there ever a time, whether it's finances or like a horrific accident that you said, I can't do this anymore? Did any of you ever run into something like that?
Well, my husband won, I don't know how many modified races and never received a dime. And when he took our wedding money and bought a sprint car, I thought I was in trouble. So I'd say I've had several of those instances. But as far as him being hurt, Fritz always shielded me from that, kind of kept it from me. The only time that I saw him really hurt, well, it was 2 times. The first time it was in Al's car out at Lernerville, and Al Hamilton called me and told me, and when he came home his eyes were dinged up, and Todd Schaefer called and told me to be prepared. So that wasn't as bad as his last time in, was that Canada, hun?
Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a scary situation, but we were very, very fortunate in his career that he was not hurt. The way he walks now, you know he's hurting, but that always was in the back of my mind. When I was growing up, I was friends with the Carberry family. I don't know if too many people. Yeah, I grew up with the Carberrys, Eileen, the kids, and Chucky was my age, and we were always together, and Chucky was killed out of Jennerstown, and that affected me more in my lifetime. I was there the night that Darryl Gone died. I saw Darryl in the car after the accident, but Chucky affected me because we were kids together, and it was horrible, and I always had it in the back of my head that, God forbid, and it's always on your mind. So I don't know how to answer that except to try to just keep going on and supporting them, and that's all you can do.
I've had Fred's car caught on fire at Susquehanna, and Freddie's car caught on fire at Silver Spring in their late models. And then the big one was with Howie at Silver Spring. So fire is always in the back of my mind. If I see a fire, out in the truck, I can freak out really quick. Matter of fact, we have pictures of Howie's fire, and I don't even look at them. We have a video of it, and I don't even look at it. It still just tears me up to this day. But as far as bad accidents, broken bones, that kind of stuff, we've been very, very fortunate, all three of them. And Derek. Derek had, I think the worst wreck he had was just a couple weeks ago at Sealands Grove when a guy decided to turn left going into the corner and put him into the fence real hard. Other than that, I mean, and he walked away, but fire is the thing that worries me the most.
Keith was in a bad crash in Knoxville one time, and the drive line went through his ankle. And they took him to the hospital out there, but then he wanted to come home, so I was lucky enough to have Al Hamilton out there at the same time and fly home with him commercially. And they came home, and Al was pushing him in a wheelchair off the airplane, and we went out and got in the car, and they had told him to make sure you go to get checked out. Well, we're on our way on 22, and Keith says, I'm not going to the hospital. And I said, yes, you are. And he goes, I'm not going to the hospital. I said, yes, you are. So we're like driving from the airport, and all of a sudden I take the turn going toward Hershey, and he said, I'm not going. I said, yes, you are. So we went to Hershey Medical Center, and they took him back and checked him, and thank goodness that we did go there, because he had to have surgery on his ankle, and he would have had a limp the rest of his life had he not gone and had his bones like straightened up, thanks to me. So now he walks normal. But anyway, and then he was also in a crash out in, was it Arizona, or it was when they did that Western tour.
Winter heat?
Was that what it was? Anyway, he backed into the fence, I think, and he hurt his tailbone, but I remember I was watching it live, and he got out of the car and collapsed, and that was a pretty scary thing, and right away my phone started ringing, letting me know he was all right, but that was also frightening. And it's really hard, too, when you do it for a living, and, you know, like everybody, we all have house payments, we all have all our bills, and you have to really think and be organized, and, you know, like all of us do, but it's really hard. We don't have a weekly paycheck. If it rains, you don't get paid, so you have to really be conservative and think. It's your job, you know.
I think, well, Lynn had a bad accident before I started dating him, and I think it was in his late model up at Sealands Grove. I think he took it out over a turn and flattened the roof or whatever. But I've just seen pictures of that. I do remember two crashes that he's had. One was at Hagerstown, where he went up in the air once, and then he went up in the air again, and he ended up in the hospital. And the story he tells is he woke up in the hospital the next morning, and he didn't know where he was or what he was doing, and they wouldn't release him unless he could remember. So was it the guy in the room with you? You took his paper and read what happened?
The guy in the room with me was dying. I mean, he was having problems, so I rang they had a little button there, I pushed the button, and he said, what do you need? I said, I'm okay, but this guy over here's, and they came in, boy, and he was. They were working on him. And then as the last nurse was leaving, I said, can I talk to you? She said, yeah. I said, what am I doing here? She said, I don't know. My shift changed at 2 o'clock and you were here. So, I had a smock on and my hands were bandaged. And it said Washington County. Well, my geography wasn't real good, but I finally realized Washington County was in Maryland, and I realized it was Hagerstown, and I didn't know if I'd wrecked one of the races. I remember nothing. So the next morning, a guy came around with a cart selling newspapers. I bought a newspaper, went to the sports page, and it said that Kenny Well was leading the 88 car down here, and that thing would take off and then it stopped, and we were single foul. Well, I went over wheel, end over end in the infield, took the shoulder harness off, and got doused pretty good. So the next morning, Frank, Saggy, and the doctor and my wife come in. You remember? Oh, hell yeah, I wrecked him. So that's how I get out of hospital. I couldn't stand up. If I lean over, I just fall down. I was screwed up for a week.
The other really bad accident that I remember is when he, I think Paul Klein, you never asked me about what drivers I do.
Oh, yeah, how about Paul Klein?
How about Paul Klein? He's not here, is he? But he got into Lynn coming out of 4, and Lynn went the whole way down the front stretch on that one, and that was a nasty wreck. But he walked away from it, so he's been pretty lucky. Other than racing snowmobiles, where I think he broke his ankle racing snowmobiles, but that's another whole story too. But he's been pretty lucky.
If you remember, Freddie was racing at, I think it was Hunterstown, and he flipped the go-kart, and they had to take him to the hospital because he had a concussion, and he to this day, he still doesn't remember anything about it. But Fred went to take the cart off of him, and he burned his hand, so I had 2 of them in the ambulance going to get us for the hospital. Fred for the
Doubleheader.
Yeah, for doubleheader. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ken. Here we go. Is this along the food line, or?
Well, this is like being a wife of a driver, you've all had some type of inclination that you might have passed something on the highway that says your husband's gonna win tonight. What inclination did you used to have that would say your husband was gonna win?
He was so handsome. And he looked really good in his uniform. He had the nicest butt. Is that it?
No.
Okay. I don't really know.
Are you talking about one that
You had diarrhea that morning.
No. Oh, I did used to get diarrhea. And it would always be like 5 to go when he was leading. And sometimes I'd still be in the stall and I'd be yelling out to somebody, "Where is he? Where is he?" But that was always, how'd you know that?
I know everything.
Did I tell you that? Yeah, that's it.
the diarrhea barometer? How we do tonight? Good. I was in the stall.
I feel really good.
Just nerves. How about it?
Or getting drunk
that's
on
good.
juicy juice.
There you go.
No.
That was just a mishap.
Anything else? Any other questions? Lynn?
You still have your mannequin?
We want to call, thanks Lynn for your input. We want to call the guys up here now. Fred Sr., Lynn, Fred, and Keith. Come on up here. We want to get a picture. And I think we do have a presentation to make.
Now stay sitting, we'll stand behind you.
You gotta get closer to Gallagher.
Ask if you show and see.
Yeah!
As you can see.
You gotta
Hey, Kathy,
you gotta come up and look at that. Are you donating that to the museum?
Now wait a minute, it's my turn. Okay.
Let me out of here.
In honor of you. Now you can't sell this, okay?
It'll be on permanent display.
Okay, because I've
You want me to explain this?
the girl, we've been 4 abreast for years.
You wanted the best.
You want the best, we've got the rest. Okay. So
Can I explain it? All right.
wait, how long can you stand here without talking?
Anyhow, we were, Paul Pitzer and I were signing autographs at Port Royal quite a few years ago. And we were saying, and Kathy came over being real nice and said, would you like to see my boobs? Just right out of the clear blue, right there. So,
What'd you answer?
well, Pitzer and I looked at one another and said, hell yeah, we'll take a chance. So she walked us over to where she was selling Keith's t-shirts, pulled up the t-shirt and showed us her boobs. So I signed one and Pitzer signed one. So there you go. That's it.
So last night at Port Royal, Debbie was with me, and I said to her, I should just take that mannequin and donate it to the Hall of Fame for Paxton. So she helps me to take it out, but I forgot I had a brick in the bottom, so I took my finger.
Black finger.
This is the only Band-Aids I had, but I cut the heck out of it.
Hey, she's just proving I'm still number one.
You were number one.
I know. I still am. Okay. I've been told that before.
I know, Barb says that.
That's why I didn't want her in a pit.
No, what do you want to?
He just said this is why he didn't want me in the pits.
Well, you gotta realize something. The pits back, there was no women in the pits. But anytime we went in the grandstand, I wanted to be in the pits because it was a lot more dangerous in the grandstand. They could get wound up and fight. Like I know at Silver Springs when I worked over there, we had a few fights in the. I'll leave it there. It doesn't bother me. But more of the fights were in the.
Let's see if you talk nasal.
Oh, get out! I'm going to tell them the story about you. But you didn't know.
What?
You didn't know what a matinee was until I told you.
I was so embarrassed. We weren't married then. And Paxton said that to me. Tell them what you were standing.
I don't remember. You tell the story.
I don't know. We were just with a bunch of guys, and he said something about, did you ever have a matinee before the race or something? I'm like, what? Oh, Barb and I, we do that all the time.
She's learned a lot over the years. Right, Keith? Yeah. All right. Okay.
She's a true blonde.
I'm not going there. Anyhow, I'm glad. By the way, Pitzer is going to be here in December.
Good.
December 3rd. We're doing a thing on Weichert. Remember Bob Weichert? And I will keep that.
Yeah.
I might put the Keith Kaufman shirt on it, just to unveil
Well, I was
it.
going to put the shirt on, Debbie said, take it naked.
I want to know the arrows are quite a nice touch.
I didn't put any arrows on the deer, you noticed that. Hey, why don't you come December 3rd and ask Pitzer about the arrow, or I'll ask him for you, okay?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. Lynn, you have anything else? I don't want to.
No, not really. I'd like to get a good picture with us. We got to kind of, Marie, your weapon, you're gonna have to move. We want to try to get it. You guys, oh, that's your weapon. Okay. Well, what we got to do is we want to try to get everybody together here and get a good picture. Okay.
How about a nice round of applause? Great job.